Ethan sat at the dinner table, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. His sister, Marissa, had just laughed at something their mother said. A light, tinkling laugh that seemed perfectly normal, except he'd heard it before. Not just earlier that evening, but exactly the same laugh, the same rhythm, the same pitch, as if someone had pressed play on a recording. He glanced at her. She was still smiling, tilting her head just slightly, a gesture that felt oddly mechanical. Their mother smiled too, repeating, "It's good to have you home, Ethan. It's good to have you home," as if the words had been queued up twice in a row by mistake. Ethan forced a smile, but his stomach churned. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was imagining things. Still, when Marissa laughed again, precisely the same sequence of notes, he dropped his fork and excused himself, retreating to the bathroom, where he locked the door and pressed his ear to the wood. Outside, the murmurs of his family blurred together. And then, faintly, he heard the synchronized sound of all three of them, his mother, father, and sister, laughing in unison. Ethan lingered in the bathroom longer than necessary, splashing cold water on his face, telling himself he was overreacting. When he finally opened the door, the house was strangely quiet. His family sat exactly as he'd left them. Same chairs, same positions, even the same half-smiles. Plates of food remained untouched. None of them seemed to have moved a muscle. Then, as if on cue, all three turned their heads toward him, perfectly synchronized. His mother's lips parted first. "You feel better?" Her tone was soft, caring even, but the way her eyes didn't quite match the expression made his skin crawl. "Yes," Ethan said quickly, forcing a casual shrug. They all resumed eating in unison, forks rising and lowering in a rhythm too exact to be coincidence. Ethan stared, his appetite gone. And then, in a voice too flat, his father asked, "Work has been good." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, delivered without inflection. Ethan swallowed hard. "Yeah, good." The silence that followed was thicker than any he'd ever known. That night, Ethan lay awake in his childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The air felt heavier than he remembered, as though the walls themselves were listening. At 2:14 a.m., he heard footsteps in the hallway. Too heavy to be Marissa's, too soft to be his father's. The steps stopped outside his door. He held his breath. A soft knock came. Just once. Then silence. After a long pause, he crept to the door and pressed his ear against it. Nothing. When he finally opened it, the hallway was empty, bathed in dim moonlight. But at the far end, he noticed something odd. His sister, standing completely still, facing the wall. "Marissa," he whispered. She didn't move. He stepped closer, heart thundering. That's when he saw it. Her arm twitching, repeating the same small jerk over and over, as if some invisible mechanism inside her had jammed. Her voice came suddenly, startlingly calm. "Go back to bed, Ethan." She hadn't turned around. The next morning, Ethan tried to convince himself it had been a dream. But when he entered the kitchen, Marissa was already there, pouring cereal into a bowl. "Morning," she said. The word landed strangely. Too flat. "Morning," Ethan replied cautiously. She blinked at him, then said it again, identical in pitch and cadence. "Morning." Ethan froze. She didn't seem to notice her repetition. She just sat down, lifted a spoon, and began eating, each bite perfectly timed, as though following a metronome. His father came in next. "How did you sleep?" he asked. Before Ethan could answer, his mother walked in and asked the same question, in the exact same tone, syllable for syllable. They all stared at him, waiting. Ethan forced a shaky laugh. "Fine. I slept fine." The three of them nodded, in eerie unison, as if his response had been a line they were rehearsing. For the first time, Ethan wondered, not if they were acting strange, but if they were practicing something, repeating until it was perfect. And he wasn't sure who they were practicing for. Ethan escaped the house that afternoon, desperate for normalcy. He wandered down to the small cafe on Main Street, a place where he'd spent countless afternoons in high school. The bell over the door jingled as he stepped inside. A few customers sat scattered at tables, sipping coffee, typing on laptops. Ordinary. Comforting. He ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, trying to shake the night's images from his mind. But then he noticed the couple at the table across from him. They were laughing. At first, it seemed normal, until he realized their laughter was exactly the same. Same timing, same pitch, like two recordings played simultaneously. They stopped in unison, picked up their cups in unison, sipped, and set them down with identical clinks. Ethan's chest tightened. The barista called out an order. Latte for Sarah. A woman at the counter stood, smiling politely. But at the far corner of the cafe, another woman stood at the exact same moment. Both of them said, "That's me," in the same tone. The barista blinked, confused. Ethan stared, his stomach dropping. They looked the same. Not twins. Not siblings. The same. Ethan left the cafe in a daze, the bitter coffee still burning on his tongue. His pulse wouldn't slow, not even after walking 3 blocks. He ducked into a storefront window to catch his breath, leaning on the cool glass. And then he noticed something. In the reflection, his family stood behind him. Mother, father, Marissa, smiling, perfectly still. He spun around. The sidewalk was empty. Just strangers passing by, none of whom even looked at him. His throat tightened. He turned back to the glass. They were still there, in the reflection only, grinning as if posing for a photograph. Slowly, they lifted their hands in unison and waved. Ethan stumbled backward into the street, nearly hit by a passing car. When he looked again, the reflection was gone, just his own pale, terrified face staring back. A passerby brushed his arm, muttering, "Careful." But when Ethan met the man's eyes, he froze. The stranger's pupils flickered, like a broken screen struggling to refresh. By evening, Ethan couldn't stand it anymore. He needed answers, or at least proof that he wasn't unraveling. He found Marissa in the living room, scrolling through her phone. Or rather, pretending to. Her fingers slid down the screen in a perfectly repeating pattern. Same speed, same length of motion, never once actually opening an app. "Marissa," Ethan said carefully. She looked up, her smile instant and sharp. "Yes, Ethan." He sat across from her, studying every twitch of her face. "Do you remember when we were kids and Dad took us camping in the mountains? You got lost for hours." Her head tilted. "Yes, I remember." He waited. "So what happened? How did we find you?" Her lips parted. And then she said, in the same measured tone, "Yes, I remember." The exact same phrase. No answer. Ethan leaned forward. "That's not what I asked." For a moment, her smile faltered. A ripple, like a mask slipping. Her left eye blinked twice in rapid succession, unnaturally fast. Then she straightened, expression smoothing again. "You should get some rest, Ethan," she said, voice eerily calm. But the words didn't match the movement of her lips. That night, Ethan set his phone to record. He placed it on the dresser, microphone pointed toward the hallway, and left it running while he pretended to sleep. Hours crawled by. Around 3 a.m., muffled sounds drifted through the door, his parents' voices, low and steady. Not conversation. Repetition. Ethan crept to the phone and glanced at the recording timer. He let it roll, every hair on his body prickling. In the morning, when the house was quiet, he played the audio back with trembling hands. First came his father's voice. "He does not suspect. He does not suspect. He does not suspect." Then his mother's, layered right on top of his father's, same pitch, same cadence. "He does not suspect. He does not suspect. He does not suspect." And then, Marissa, monotone and slow, as if catching up. "Suspect, suspect, suspect." The voices looped for nearly 20 minutes before falling silent. Ethan dropped the phone on the bed, while rising in his throat. They weren't talking to each other. They were rehearsing. Ethan couldn't carry it alone anymore. He drove across town to see his oldest friend, Mark, the one person who'd always been steady, grounded, normal. Mark opened the door with his usual grin. "Ethan, man, it's been forever." Relief washed over him. Mark's handshake was warm, his laugh genuine. For a moment, everything felt right. They sat down in the living room, beers in hand, and Ethan spilled everything. The repeated phrases, the robotic gestures, the strange recording. Mark listened, nodding slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes seemed still. Too still. When Ethan finished, Mark set his beer down carefully. "That's a lot," he said. "I know how it sounds," Ethan said, desperation cracking his voice. "But it's real. I'm not imagining it." Mark leaned forward, expression grave. "Of course you're not. We've been waiting for you to notice." Ethan's heart stopped. "What?" Mark smiled again, but this time, it was the same smile Ethan had seen on his sister, his mother, his father. Too wide. Too precise. Ethan bolted from Mark's house without a word, ignoring his friend's calls that followed him down the driveway. His mind reeled. Mark, too? The last person he thought he could trust. He drove aimlessly for hours, until dusk smeared the sky with bruised colors. Finally, he parked near the old playground where he and Mark had once wasted summers. He sat on the swings, trying to calm the panic thudding in his chest. Children played nearby, their laughter thin and shrill in the cooling air. Ethan forced himself to listen, to find something human, something normal. Then he froze. Two little boys at the jungle gym shouted the same phrase at the same time. "I'm king of the castle." Their voices overlapped perfectly, like an echo folding in on itself. They climbed in sync, arms and legs moving in mirrored rhythm. Ethan turned toward the benches. 3 parents sat watching, but not at their children, at him. Smiling. The hair on his neck rose. It wasn't just his family. It wasn't just Mark. It was everywhere. Ethan didn't go home. He couldn't. The thought of stepping back into that house, into their smiles, their rehearsals, made his skin crawl. Instead, he drove straight onto the highway, headlights cutting through the dark. His only plan was away. Away from the town, away from the faces that no longer felt real. But even on the open road, the sense of being watched didn't fade. At the gas station where he stopped to refuel, the attendant greeted him with a too smooth evening. A woman walked past him humming, and when the man at the next pump hummed the same tune, at the exact same pitch, Ethan's hands shook so badly he dropped the nozzle. Back in the car, he tried to call someone, anyone, but his phone screen glitched, flickering between static and the frozen image of Marissa's smile. No contacts, no numbers, just her face. The car's engine roared as he sped back onto the highway. Town lights vanished behind him. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. But in the rearview mirror, headlights appeared. 1 car, then another, then 3, all following at the same perfect distance. The line of headlights behind Ethan never faltered. No one tried to pass him, no one dropped back. They held formation, 3 white beams cutting through the dark, always the same distance apart. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He swerved suddenly onto an exit ramp, tires screaming. For a moment, relief surged, until all 3 cars followed, turning in perfect sync, no hesitation. Ethan's breath came fast and shallow. He took another sharp turn, this time into a deserted industrial district, weaving between warehouses and loading docks. Still, the headlights tracked him flawlessly, like predators scenting blood. Finally, he skidded into an alley and killed his engine, plunging into darkness. He crouched low in the seat, every muscle trembling. The cars passed by at the mouth of the alley, and then stopped. Engines idled. Headlights pointed outward, not in. Waiting. Ethan held his breath. Then, as if obeying an unheard signal, all 3 engines cut off at once. Silence fell, thick and unnatural. And from the shadows outside his window, a voice whispered, "You can't run from family, Ethan." Ethan didn't dare look toward the voice. He shoved the car door open and sprinted down the alley, sneakers slapping against cracked pavement. He vaulted a chain-link fence, tearing his hand on the metal, and ran until his lungs burned. When he finally stopped, he found himself in a neighborhood of dark houses, the kind where curtains stayed drawn and porch lights never flickered on. He crouched low behind a hedge, forcing shallow breaths. For a moment, silence. Then, movement. A man across the street opened his front door and stepped outside. He didn't look around, didn't stretch, didn't act like anyone Ethan had ever seen leaving a house. He simply stood there, face tilted slightly up, eyes fixed on nothing. And then, one by one, the rest of the houses followed. Doors creaked open. Figures emerged. Men, women, even children, all stepping outside at the same steady pace, all staring blankly into the night air. Ethan sank lower into the hedge, stomach churning. Dozens of them, standing in rows, waiting. Then, in unison, every head turned toward him. Ethan bolted from the hedge, heart pounding as dozens of footsteps fell into rhythm behind him. Not a chaotic chase, an organized advance, boots and shoes striking pavement at the same pace, like a single heartbeat amplified. He cut through backyards, hurdled fences, tore his clothes on branches, but every time he glanced back, the figures had adjusted, closing gaps, reappearing at the edges of streets he hadn't even reached yet. Somehow, they always knew where he was going. He finally ducked into an abandoned service station, pressing himself flat against the wall, gasping for air. For a few seconds, the silence returned. Then, from every direction, a low hum began. Faint at first, then growing, vibrating through his ribs. The sound wasn't coming from throats. It was electronic, mechanical, resonating from within them. The lights inside the service station flickered, matching the rhythm of the hum. Ethan clutched his ears, teeth rattling. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. From outside, a single voice spoke, calm and flat. "Ethan is ready." Ethan's chest heaved as he pressed himself deeper into the shadows of the service station. His palms were slick, his throat raw. Ready for what? A scraping sound came from the garage bay. The rusted door shuddered, rising inch by inch though no one touched it. Beyond, the night glowed faintly, not from street lamps, but from dozens of eyes reflecting a pale, unnatural light. Shapes filled the lot outside. Not just his family now, not just Mark, not just the neighbors. More. Hundreds. Faces he recognized from town, and faces he didn't. All waiting, all perfectly still, eyes catching the dim glow like glass marbles. They began to move forward, not in chaos, but in formation. Rows tightening, filling every gap, as if rehearsed for years. Ethan stumbled back, knocking over a rusted tool cart. The crash echoed, and every single head snapped toward him at once. Then, as if on command, they all smiled. The same smile. And in unison, they spoke. "You belong with us, Ethan." The voices rattled through the service station, layered and seamless. Not hundreds of people speaking, but one voice multiplied. Ethan stumbled back until his spine hit cold concrete. "Stay away from me," he shouted, but the words felt pitiful against that perfect chorus. Then something happened that froze the air in his lungs. Marissa stepped forward from the crowd, smile unbroken. Her skin shimmered, just for a moment, like heat rising from asphalt. For an instant, Ethan saw what lay beneath. A face stretched too thin, features shifting like liquid, eyes too large and lidless, glistening as if wet. Then the shimmer vanished. She was his sister again, smiling. Another figure rippled, his father this time, revealing a glimpse of jagged mandibles jutting from a mouth too wide to be human. The mask snapped back into place, as if nothing had happened. Ethan pressed a hand to his temple, vision swimming. They weren't glitches. They weren't accidents. They were leaks. Whatever wore his family's faces couldn't hold the disguise much longer. Ethan's panic snapped into something else, rage, or maybe raw survival instinct. His hand closed around a rusted crowbar on the floor. He raised it high, knuckles white. "Stay back," he roared. The crowd didn't flinch. They only smiled wider, rows of teeth flashing in perfect symmetry. Marissa, or the thing inside her, took another step forward. Ethan swung with all his strength. The crowbar smashed across her shoulder, the clang echoing like steel against steel. For a heartbeat, she didn't react. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, her skin split along the impact, peeling back to reveal the glistening machinery beneath. Wires twitched like veins. A faint blue light pulsed where bone should have been. The disguise wavered, glitching like static on a broken TV. The others remained still, as though waiting to see what he'd do next. Ethan lifted the crowbar again, chest heaving. "You're not my sister." Marissa tilted her head, the rippling mask trembling. Her voice came out distorted, layered, his sister's tone tangled with something metallic beneath. "We are all your sister, Ethan." Ethan swung again, this time at the nearest stranger in the formation. The crowbar connected with a sickening crack, but instead of flesh, sparks burst, and the figure folded unnaturally, limbs jerking like a puppet with its strings cut. The rest of them didn't move. They just watched, unblinking, as the broken body twitched on the floor. Then, in eerie synchrony, every single head tilted to the same angle. Ethan backed toward the service station door, crowbar slick with his own sweat. He shoved through into the night air. For a moment, silence. Then the entire formation surged forward at once. Not running, not stumbling, moving together, perfectly coordinated, as if one being controlled them all. Their footsteps hit the ground in a single thunderous beat. Ethan sprinted across the lot, lungs tearing, the crowbar dragging at his side. Behind him, the chorus of voices rose, Not shouts, not screams, but a single phrase repeated endlessly, overlapping into a metallic roar. Home, Ethan. Home. 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 The pavement cracked beneath his feet, spiderwebbing outward, as though the whole town itself was beginning to split apart. Ethan tore through the industrial district, lungs on fire, legs numb. He didn't care where he was going, only that it was away. At last, he stumbled onto a main road. Relief surged when he saw a familiar sign, Route 9 eastbound. Safety. Freedom. He sprinted toward it, vaulted the guardrail, and collapsed against a mile marker, chest heaving. But when he lifted his head, his blood ran cold. The sign read the same thing. Route 9 eastbound. The exact same dent in the metal. The same spray-painted tag he remembered from high school. He turned. Behind him, the industrial buildings loomed again, exactly as they had minutes ago. He hadn't escaped. He'd run in a circle. A figure emerged from the shadows. His father, smiling, hands clasped behind his back. "You're tired," he said gently. Another voice echoed him. His mother, stepping forward in sync. "You're tired." Marissa joined, the same words spilling out, delayed by half a beat. "You're tired." And from every direction now, the chorus rose, hundreds of voices folding over one another. "You're tired. You're tired. You're tired." Ethan clutched his head, spinning. The world itself felt like a cage, looping him back no matter where he ran. Ethan staggered backward, ears ringing with the endless chant. The road stretched on forever, but he knew, no matter how far he ran, he'd only circle back. So instead, he did the only thing his gut screamed might break it. He turned toward the crowd and charged. The voices faltered for half a second, as if caught off guard. He swung the crowbar into the pavement with everything he had. Concrete splintered, sparks spitting where steel met stone. The world flickered. For an instant, the sky glitched, stars blinking in and out like faulty pixels. The crowd rippled, their disguises shimmering, their faces melting into half-seen shapes, elongated jaws, ridged skulls, eyes like shards of glass. The chant warped, breaking into static. Ethan screamed and swung again, and the air itself seemed to crack. The rows of figures froze, glitching in jagged frames, like a video skipping on repeat. Then the illusion knit itself back together. The sky smoothed, the road straightened, the voices resumed their harmony. But this time, they spoke a new phrase, perfectly in sync. "He knows." And they began walking toward him. The chorus pressed closer, their smiles unbroken. Ethan stumbled back, clutching the crowbar, though his arms felt leaden now. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, voice cracking. The crowd stopped in perfect unison. His father stepped forward, face flickering between the mask and the thing beneath. "You've always belonged to us, Ethan." His mother joined, her voice layered, metallic. "You were never outside." Marissa's turn, her words halting, glitching. "You are the last one." Ethan's chest clenched. "The last what?" Then the voices merged again, hundreds folding into one vibration that rattled the streetlights. "The last human." The world tilted. The air grew heavy, buzzing with unseen static. Ethan dropped to his knees, while rising in his throat. All this time, his family, his friends, his neighbors, the town itself, not invaded, not replaced. They always had been this way. And somehow, impossibly, he was the only one left who wasn't. Ethan shook his head violently, gripping the crowbar as though it could anchor him to reality. "No," he rasped. "That's a lie. There are billions of people, millions of towns, cities, whole countries. I'm not the last. I can't be." The crowd didn't move. They only smiled wider, their eyes glowing faintly now, pulsing with the same rhythm. His father's voice came again, low and calm. "Then call them, Ethan. Call anyone." Ethan fumbled for his phone, hands trembling. The screen lit up, but every contact had vanished. Only one remained. A single name, Marissa. He dropped it, breath hitching. That's not possible. The street around him shimmered, buildings warping at the edges as if painted on thin glass. For a moment, Ethan saw endless black beyond, pierced only by cold starlight. Then the illusion solidified again. The crowd hadn't moved, but the air vibrated with their words. "You are the last." Ethan staggered back, throat dry. His mind screamed to deny it, but deep down, Something colder whispered it was true. Ethan's thoughts spiraled, his grip on the crowbar slipping with sweat. If the town, the roads, even the sky could flicker and warp, then maybe none of it was real. Maybe he was trapped inside their construct. And if it was all fake, maybe he could break it. He raised the crowbar high and swung at the nearest streetlight. The bulb exploded in a burst of sparks, showering the pavement. For a second, the world around him trembled, houses bending, the crowd stuttering like broken film frames. It was working. He screamed and struck again, this time into the asphalt itself. The ground splintered with a sound like tearing metal. The figures twitched, their smiles faltering, their voices glitching into static. Stop, 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 they echoed, overlapping out of sync for the first time. Ethan's heart pounded. He lifted the crowbar one last time, ready to smash the illusion to pieces. But before he could swing, Marissa stepped forward. Her disguise peeled away completely, revealing the wet, glistening machinery beneath. And she whispered, her voice the only sound in the silence. If you break it, Ethan, you break yourself. Ethan froze, crowbar trembling midair. Marissa, or the thing inside her, stood bare now, her human mask discarded like a shed skin. The gleam of exposed metal, the twitch of filaments beneath transparent flesh, made Bal crawl up his throat. What are you?" he whispered. Her head tilted, mandibles clicking softly. "What you will be." The crowd parted, making a corridor of smiling faces. At the far end, a pulsing light grew, spherical, alive with shifting patterns of color. Its glow painted the figures' faces in rippling hues, like worshippers basking in holy fire. "You have resisted," his father's voice said from the throng, though his lips didn't move. "You lasted longer than the others. But resistance only proves readiness." His mother's voice chimed in, metallic harmony. "Join us, Ethan. Lay down the burden of being last. You need never be alone again." The pulsing light swelled, humming deep in his bones. For the first time, the chorus did not demand, it invited. Ethan's crowbar slipped from his grasp, clattering uselessly to the fractured pavement. The light pulsed once more, reaching for him. The light engulfed him, flooding his vision, his ears, his lungs. For a moment, there was no pain, only warmth, a suffocating comfort that pressed against every nerve. The crowd's voices dissolved into a single resonance, vibrating in the marrow of his bones. "You were never outside." The words weren't spoken. They bloomed inside his head, undeniable. Memories flickered, birthdays, school, first kisses, all of them rippling at the edges like fragile film. Faces peeled back, revealing the same alien machinery beneath. His entire life shuddered like a failing simulation. And then he saw it. In the pulsing light, a reflection of himself. Not human at all. His skin flickered, revealing polished metal, wires coiled where veins should be. His eyes glowed, twin orbs of cold fire. "No," he croaked, staggering. But the truth wrapped tight around him. He hadn't been the last human. He had never been human at all. The chorus swelled, triumphant. "Welcome home, Ethan." And as the light consumed him, he smiled back. Perfect, synchronized, at last in harmony with the rest.